Today on Dr. Phil, her ex-boyfriend attacked her.
He stabbed me in the head, and he stabbed me in the stomach.
Was he arrested for this?
Now,
Heather Castle's body was found early Monday morning.
he's accused of murder.
I feel like I'm responsible for her death. I should have prosecuted him when I had the chance.
Is she guilty of protecting him?
What do you say to Heather Castle's family?
I should have told the truth.
Why didn't you? Let's do it. Why don't we stop all the drama, stop all the fighting, and let's go get you better.
Here we go. Have a good show, everybody.
If I can help get this family back on track, are you willing to do that?
Ready, three, take.
This is going to be a changing day in your life. Go, Dr. Phil. How you doing? In just March of this year, a young woman by the name of Heather Castle was shot and killed as she ran screaming across a front lawn, handcuffs hanging from one of her wrists. The court records say that Castle was shot in her midsection and then below her left eye. Take a look.
An arrest in Monday's murder near Spokane Falls Community College. Heather Castle's body was found early Monday morning.
Detectives say that she was shot in the face and the chest and had a handcuff hanging from one wrist. Heather's ex-boyfriend, John Ritchie, and his uncle, Gary Stoddard, are both accused of her murder. We uncovered more details about Stoddard's dark past, including a long history of accusations of violence against women.
Gary's had problems with the law for years, but a lot of his charges were reduced or dismissed. This alleged rape victim of Gary Stoddard says Gary should have been locked up long ago. She still lives in fear.
I'm scared of him.
Gary Stoddard and his nephew, Jonathan Ritchie, are charged with first-degree murder. Stoddard faces an additional charge of first-degree kidnapping. Now, my first guest says that before this heinous crime, she was Gary Stoddard's girlfriend, and she claims that she suffered traumatizing and daily abuse at his hands for years. Now she says she suffers tremendous guilt because she says she failed to tell the court the whole truth about the horrific abuse, and as a result, Gary was released onto the street to allegedly victimize other women, such as Miss Castle.
After I refused to prosecute Gary, he ended up serving not even a year in jail. About a month ago, Gary was accused of kidnapping and murdering a woman.
An arrest in Monday's murder near Spokane Falls Community College. Heather Castle's body was found early Monday morning.
When I heard that Heather Castle was killed and Gary was the suspect, I had a complete panic attack. My coworker had to call the ambulance because I couldn't breathe and I couldn't stop shaking. I feel like I'm responsible for her death, and her death didn't have to happen. I feel completely guilty. I should have prosecuted him when I had the chance. If I had only told the truth and had him convicted, I know that I could have completely prevented this last victim being murdered. And I feel completely responsible. I'm very sorry. I don't know how to go on with my life because I'm in so much pain just thinking about it.
Well, bottom line, you do feel some responsibility because you didn't tell the truth.
Very much so.
What do you say to Heather Castle's family when you're alone by yourself? I know you've thought it through in your mind 1,000 times.
Very many times I've wanted to reach out to them. I've wanted to say, you know, I'm sorry. I mean, I feel like it should have been me. I'm sorry. I wish I would have told the truth. Your daughter should still be here to wake up with her son in the morning. Honestly, I just tell him how sorry I am and that I should have told the truth.
Why didn't you?
Fear. For 6.5 years, I went through torture and rape. He liked to do things like handcuff me naked to our fence outside in our neighborhood. He'd like to point a gun to my head and forced me to get naked while we're driving.
Okay, now wait a minute. You're saying this man that you're living with, this man that you had professed love to and that he loved you, would drag you into the yard naked and handcuff you to the fence?
For hours. He left me, drove me to a very busy street in my city and left me naked. I had to run for cover, and he left me there for 10 minutes.
And of course, these are allegations because since you didn't report them and he wasn't convicted of this, we have to treat them as allegations because we don't have proof of it. But you say he would take you in the car naked and drive you around and hold a gun to your head.
Yes, many times if he ever thought the police were called or if he ever thought that I called the police, he would definitely abduct me and take me on joyrides because he felt like if there was a certain period of time that passed by, they wouldn't do anything if there was a call. There's one time where he bound me with duct tape around my eyes, around my mouth, and around my hands and my feet and threw me in naked in my trunk and drove me around for I don't know how long, and I couldn't even breathe because I was crying. I was raped on a daily basis by him. He'd wait for me to fall asleep, and he would tie me up with electrical cord ties, and he would rape me.
You said he would cut your clothes off with razor blades.
The very first time he raped me, he had a razor knife, and he cut my clothes off and made sure he cut my, like, just barely touched my skin all the way down.
Did you think about leaving, getting away from him?
Yeah, I mean, there were many times where I'd want to try to set him up with other, I mean, seriously, I had a son to think about. I tried to want to set him up with other women, just get his focus off of me, and he knew I had absolutely no love for him, and that's what made things worse for me.
He had guns and knives.
At one point in time, he had like $60,000 worth of guns.
Did he ever shoot at you?
Yes.
He actually shot at you?
Yes.
Where?
He would take me up north, and he would, I mean, that was his whole thing. He wanted to scare me. I didn't know when my last day would be, the last day of my life. Every day, I thought that would be my last day.
There was a point when you said it was the last straw. Tell me about that.
I was working one day, and he had called me when I was at work, and he told me, he said, "Charlotte, I got a little carried away with the belt today." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I beat your son with a belt." I'm like, "Are you kidding?" I thought he was kidding. He brought him into my work, and my son had a big inch-thick welt on his face, and he had a welt on his stomach and on his back from him beating him with a belt. And when I saw that his anger went from me to our son, I couldn't have my son get abused. But up to that point, he was a very good dad.
So what did you do?
I talked to my family, and it was my New Year's resolution, 1997, to leave him. He had something to do that day, thankfully, and we just grabbed minimal stuff of mine, and we grabbed Jake's stuff, and we moved into my mom's house.
But he knew where you were?
Yeah.
Did he come over there?
The very next day, he waited for my mom and my stepdad to leave for work, which is very early, and he abducted us with a knife. He knew the cops were coming, so we went through the alley, and when we were going through the alley, I kept looking back, and he says, "If you look back anymore, I'm going to cut your son's head off." And so he had the knife against Jake's throat, and he kept putting it closer and closer. So I kept trying to follow him to where he wanted to go. So we made it through the alley, and then we saw the police officer arrive. And as soon as he saw the cop, I said, "Hand me my son right now." So he handed Jake to me, and he was arrested then.
He goes to jail. We're going to find out why. We're going to find out what happened when we come back. We'll be right back.
I go to drop him off right in front of his mom's house, and he pulls out a knife from his sock. He stabbed me in the stomach a couple times. I feel I'm still haunted by my past. I have nightmares that Gary's raping me and trying to kill me, and I wake up screaming at the top of my lungs. I'm still afraid that he could get out, and I'm still afraid that he could do something to me.
All right, Charlotte claims to have suffered horrific abuse at the hands of her ex-boyfriend. She says that she was so afraid that she was just paralyzed, that she couldn't leave. But when it finally got to the point that she says he abused their son, you leave, go to your mother's house, he shows up, abducts you and your son, according to you, he's arrested, he has these serious charges, he gets out on bail, right? Who bails him out? Tell me it wasn't you.
I actually helped his mom refinance her house to bail him out.
You helped his mother bail him out, so he has access to you again. Does he come see you?
I agreed to meet him at a local restaurant
You agree to meet him in a public place. Why?
because I was afraid of him. He said he wanted to talk about Jake, and I was afraid of raising a son all by myself. I was still pretty young, 22 years old.
You go to meet him. Are you afraid he's got weapons?
I have one of his friends dropped him off, and both his friend and I patted him down from head to toe.
So you
for
frisk
weapons.
him
Yes.
to be sure he didn't have a weapon.
Yes.
Okay. Then when you finish meeting with him, what happens? He wants a ride.
He said his stomach was sick and he needed a ride back to his mom's house, and he just begged. So I gave him a ride.
Okay. And what happens when you get in the car?
When we got in the car, everything was fine. We just talk a little bit, and I go to drop him off right in front of his mom's house, and he pulls out a knife from his sock.
So you frisk him, but not as thoroughly as you thought.
And he then puts it against my throat and tells me to drive. He told me to pull up behind a dumpster next to a movie theater, and that's where we were stopped, and I tried to get out. He stabbed me. He stabbed me in the head, and he stabbed me in the stomach a couple times. It didn't go through my clothes, so there's no wounds, but after he stabbed me, because he told me to get in the back seat after that, and I lifted my head up, and there was just blood just gushing and through my hands, and I ran and got away and ran into the movie theater, at which point he followed me in there with a knife, and I crunched in a corner, and people saw him with a knife, and there was like 6 people that made a circle around me and protected me and said, "Leave her alone." I screamed so loud that the fire department a half a block away heard me, and they came in and tended to my wound.
Is he arrested for this?
He stole my car, and he was out on the run for a while until they found him, and he was arrested.
But what do you do?
I talked with the prosecution on the phone several times, telling them my story. They interviewed all the witnesses. I mean, there was someone that actually saw him stab me. And when it came time, when I had my face-to-face interview with a prosecutor, I told him I hit my head on the car door when I was leaving, and that's how I got my wound.
So you recanted your story, made up something else, and so they proceeded without you.
On a domestic violence and taking a motor vehicle without permission.
And he got out. And that's what you say you feel bad about, because he would still be in jail today.
Yes.
And unavailable to allegedly murder Heather Castle. Gary Stoddard has been a suspect in multiple cases involving kidnapping and rape. He has never been convicted. On the phone is Detective Jeff Barrington. He is the lead detective on the Heather Castle murder case. Detective Barrington, thank you for joining us on the phone. What can you tell us about the current case?
Mr. Stoddard has been charged with the kidnapping and murder investigation involving Heather Castle, and still ongoing investigation.
And it's believed at this point that he was the shooter in this case, that he shot her in the low back and then also in the face. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You've been listening to my conversation, correct, with Charlotte?
Yeah.
And you can hear here that she's talked about the fact that she alleges that she has been a victim of this man on a number of occasions, but then failed to go forward with the prosecution when it got down to it. I mean, that essentially ties your hands, ties the prosecutor's hands, the detective's hands, ties everybody's hands when they go to prosecute someone like this, correct?
Yeah, most definitely, yes.
Would she be of benefit in this case to come forward and testify should the prosecutors want her to provide history on this man's character and background?
Potentially, however, there may be some court issues from the defense on trying to allow those facts in.
Right.
However, there are some legal issues that can be argued by both sides in that matter.
Of course, but you want every opportunity. That's something that you hope the prosecutors have lots of things to choose from, correct?
That's correct.
Charlotte, if you were able to help in some way in this case, is that something you would be willing to do?
I've reached out right away, yes.
So you've made yourself known to the detectives and to the prosecutors?
The day that I found out about it, yes.
Okay. All right. So, Detective Barrington, if there are people that are watching this broadcast now that have had interactions with this Gary Stoddard that have helpful information, you would want them to contact their local law enforcement, give them that information, then they will get that to the Spokane Police Department. Is that correct?
Yeah, we would hope so. Yeah, if you could mention who they're talking about and where he's from.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming and talking to us about this, and we appreciate all the work you're doing on this. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, thank you.
Charlotte's former live-in nanny, Jennifer, alleges that Gary attacked her in the middle of the night. And what does Gary's son remember about knives, threats, and abuse? We're going to talk to all of them, because I'm going to tell you, when these people go out and do this thing, you see it on the news, but you know what we don't get? We don't get how many lies are spun out of control by what these people do. And you know, the cuts, the bruises, the wounds on the outside heal, but what about the wounds on the inside? What about what is done to the people that are the victims? And we contacted Gary Stoddard's attorney, and he sent the following comment. Mr. Stoddard has entered pleas of not guilty to charges pending in Spokane County. Mr. Stoddard has no comment regarding prior charges or allegations. Regards, Tom Kreminski, Director, Counsel for Defense. We're going to take a look at how it spun this family and some others way, way out of balance. We'll be right back.
When I was sleeping in the bedroom, Gary had both my arms duct taped above my head. I was squirming and trying to get away from Gary, and I started screaming.
Did you hear her screaming?
One day, Gary beat me with a belt, and Jacob picked up on his behavior, and the next day, Jacob grabbed the belt and started hitting me with it. It broke my heart to see that my son was picking up on the abusive behavior.
We've been talking to Charlotte, a woman riddled with guilt, because she says she changed her story during a trial prosecuting her ex-boyfriend. Now, she had the ability, according to her, to put him away for many, many years. Enough years that she says that he would not be on the street today to have committed a murder that he is currently charged with committing. Now, he hasn't been convicted, so right now it's a charge, it's an allegation. Now, Charlotte's former live-in nanny, Jennifer, alleges that Gary Stoddard attacked her at 3 a.m. in the morning, but Stoddard was never charged with any such attack. Jennifer says she was 14 years old at the time, and she's joining us by phone. Thanks so much for joining us. Can you tell us what happened when you were 14? Take us back to that time at 3 a.m. in the morning. What happened?
I was in my bedroom in Charlotte's house, in Gary's house. I was sleeping. I had on like a button-up jersey and a little pair of shorts. I had just gone to bed around 1, I believe. There was 2 other guys in the house, Gary's friends. One was on the chair and one was laying on the couch. And when I was sleeping in the bedroom, Gary had come in the room and taken both of my arms and put them above my head, and he had duct tape, and he had put duct tape in my arms, like, kind of above my head where I couldn't barely move my face. I had both of my arms, like, above my head. And he was trying to put the duct tape across my mouth, and he had told me not to scream because he had Charlotte duct taped up in the bedroom. And I was just thinking, Charlotte's taped up, where's Jake the baby? The whole time I was really worried. And then he had started like kissing my face down to my neck, and I was taking my legs, I was squirming, trying to get away from Gary, and I kicked him really hard, and I started screaming, and then he was screaming, like, Gary yelled at me, he's like, you f***ing bitch, and then I had gotten out into the living room, and I see Gary's friend sitting on the couch, and then I had got into the front door, and it was really hard getting the front door open because I was so upset. I got the front door open. I started running out to the grass, down around the garages all the way down, and I look back, and here comes Gary running after me. He was in his socks, and it was raining out. He was just chasing me down the driveway, and I had gone to this house at the end of the driveway, and I was pounding. Gary kept getting closer. And I was screaming. People were coming outside. I ran up to the house. And Gary had seen the guy that had lived in the house with his girlfriend. And he had turned around and went back to the house. It took the police probably like 15 to 20 minutes to get to the house where I was. I told them what happened. They went to back to Gary and Charlotte's house. And then they came back to me and told them that everybody in the house was sleeping. Nobody heard anything. Because I was only 14, they took me back to my parents' house. And then a few weeks later, they called me and told me there wasn't enough evidence. That Gary wasn't going to be charged for what he did to me.
You weren't duct taped up that night, right?
No, I was
And
just asleep.
did you hear her screaming?
No.
Jennifer,
I don't understand how nobody could hear me screaming.
how did Charlotte not hear you screaming? Do you believe that she didn't hear you?
No, I don't understand. Nobody could hear him. He was yelling. I was screaming. I don't understand.
I didn't hear her screaming. I woke up to Gary at 5 a.m. in the morning doing his hair, and I asked him, I'm like, why are you up this early and why are you doing your hair? Not even 5 minutes after me asking him that question, I had 20 cops in that place, and they pulled me aside and they told me what had happened, and I said, he did it. I said, take him to jail. He did it.
She does not believe you didn't hear her. She believes you heard her and you were scared and afraid and you laid there and didn't do anything about it. Have you ever apologized to her for what happened?
Yeah, if I didn't, Jennifer, I'm sorry now. I've always been sorry. It sickens me. If I could have done more, I would have. She told me that he had socks on and that he ran after her.
She doesn't believe you. She doesn't believe you didn't hear her. She's told us straight up she does not believe you didn't hear her. She believes you heard her and you were scared and afraid and you laid there and didn't do anything about it.
No, that's not the case, and I'm sorry if you believe that. Jennifer, I am really, really sorry. If I could have done more, I would have, and I didn't hear you. I would have done more, I swear.
What do you want to say, Jennifer?
If you found the socks and you found the duct tape and you found his shirt, and why is the detective saying there was no evidence? Why did he not get prosecuted if you knew he did it and he had the stuff? Why wasn't it given to the detective so he could have been prosecuted for what he did that night?
I don't know about the shirt or the duct tape. I don't remember ever seeing that, but I did give the socks to the detective. So those are questions for the detective that did the case. But I was all for, at that point in my life, I wanted him out of my life, and I thought that was a pretty open door for him to get out. So I wanted him gone.
I really loved you, and I really loved Jake, and It's been 20 years. This is the first time in 20 years we're even talking about this.
Yeah. Very hard. It's very difficult. A lot of guilt.
Well, Jennifer, I really hope that I hope that you two have an opportunity to visit about this. Now, Charlotte and Gary's son, Jacob, says he still suffers from flashbacks from the abuse he says he witnessed 17 years ago. Take a look at this.
Memories of my dad sometimes come back to me in daydreams, but I try not to think about it too much. There was a time where my mom and my dad had both gotten into an argument, and my dad had decided it would be a good idea to unscrew the bedpost. And he tries to go to hit my mom with it, except I jumped in the way of it and ended up taking the hit from my mom. They were always fighting. I was with my mother at my grandmother's house when he got arrested. From what I remember, he came and he picks me up and holds a knife to my throat and says, "I'm gonna kill him." The last thing I remember from my dad was him running away from the cop cars that were coming. I've not heard or seen from my dad since I was about 3 or 4. I was somewhat curious about him, so I looked online. All I could find was a nice list of jail records. My uncle called me the day that Heather Castle was shot.
Investigators say Gary Stoddard killed Castle. Her body was left near Spokane Falls Community College.
I can't say for sure that he did it, but I wouldn't put it past him. I honestly worry that I share part of his mentality, just genetically. I just try to do what's opposite from what he did. I don't think my mom should be guilty for anything that happened. There's really only one person to blame for it, and that's him.
Well, Jacob is on the phone, and Jacob, I just want to deal with the question that you talked about at the end. You said you really wonder and are concerned if you have the genes of your father. Is that something that you think about?
I do think about it, but not too often. I'm really not worried about it. I realize that most of my personality can come from life experience rather than genetics.
Well, I hope that's the case, because that truly is, look, there are things that pass on genetically from parents to their children, but the choices we make in life are not one of those things, and you clearly do not possess any kind of genetic matter, genetic makeup, or even predisposition from what your father is alleged to carry in his life pattern. I mean, if he is involved in the things that he's alleged to have done, if he's even involved in the things that he has been convicted of doing, that in no way predestines you to do the same things. Please don't let that even flit into your mind occasionally, okay?
Okay.
So I certainly hope you don't do that. All right, we have to take a break. Next, Charlotte is a newlywed, but her husband says, look, there's a point at which she just has to stop obsessing about her past. She has to stop being a drama queen. Is he right about this? Does she need to get over this and move on? We're going to talk to him when we come back.
I don't think you care about what I'm going through.
I don't think you're serious about wanting to get help. I might get the over this.
Race has told me that he thinks that I'm a drama queen. I hold a lot of anger and resentment inside of me because of everything that's happened to me. And it's moved on to where my relationships with other people, and there was a time where I was physical with Race and punched him in the face. My fear is that if I don't control my anger and rage, that I might lose my husband and my family.
Well, I'm talking to Charlotte, whose ex-boyfriend is charged with the murder of a young woman. Charlotte says her current husband's cold and callous remarks show no compassion for all the pain and suffering she's been through, and it's tearing their marriage apart. All of this has come to the forefront because this ex is now accused in the first-degree murder of a young woman just a few weeks ago. Her husband, Ray, says he doesn't want his wife obsessing about the past. She needs to move on. Take a look.
The day that Gary Stoddard was arrested, from that point forward, it was just this giant spiral to the point where I'm like, get the over this.
I don't think you care about what I'm going through.
I don't think you're serious about wanting to get help. I think that she's re-victimizing herself. Every day she'll look up any article she can find on him. I upset her more by not giving a
Race has told me that he thinks that I'm a drama queen.
When I say drama, I mean obsessing. She said that we should go down to the courthouse and watch his arraignment so she can shout obscenities at him.
He thinks that I should just get over what happened to me because I have a better life now.
It's not going to be a good situation for my son as he gets older. Oh, they're good hugs.
I don't think that in a million years he'd ever be able to comprehend what I'm telling him.
If she doesn't follow through and get the help that she needs, this time next year we won't be married.
You should learn to listen to your wife.
I have been listening, that's the problem.
I don't know who else to talk to if I can't even talk to my own husband.
Okay, Race, I'm glad you're here. Your position is fairly reflected in that tape?
On the situation, absolutely. What can you do to help my wife get over this?
Well, I could muzzle her husband first. I could tell you to zip it. And here's the thing. Surprisingly, I agree with your goal. I agree with your objective.
Right.
You do need to heal from this. You do need to get this in your past and move on from this and not let this man, what he has perpetrated upon you in your belief and perception, what you allege. And I know I don't, when I say allege, I'm not saying that because I doubt you. I'm saying that because I have no proof of that, and therefore I can't conclude, I can't treat that as the truth. I have to say alleged because he's not here to defend himself. So in fairness, I have to say that what you say he did to you is alleged. But you know what's true. You don't want those things to dictate the rest of your life. You don't want to give your power to him. So you are right in your objective that she needs to make that part of her history and move on. So you and I have the same goal.
Absolutely.
Our method is very different. Your method is you're frustrated.
Absolutely.
Right? And in that frustration, you're just kind of saying, hey, you know, move on. Yeah, that's a little insensitive. That ain't helping.
Obviously.
Okay, so we can, right?
Absolutely.
We don't need to be saying that anymore, right?
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, because you want the right things. Do you love your wife?
More than anything in the world.
And you do have compassion for what she's been through.
I do. I don't have the tools myself to fix her.
Right.
And that's part of something that's going to help our marriage endure this, is going to be giving myself the tools, giving her the tools, allowing us to move forward and enjoy the life that we've created together.
Right. Well, let me help you with this, okay? And,
sure.
and I mean that in all seriousness. Here's rule number one. Don't ever get yourself in a position where you blame the victim. She didn't ask for this. It's easy from the outside looking in to say, well, he went to the store one day, why didn't you just leave? Well, you know, there's a certain emotional paralysis that comes over someone when they are the subject of abuse. This is a well-studied phenomenon, and the last thing in the world we want abuse victims to do is get up on their hind legs and confront their abusers. You know, that's what you might think to do because you're not in that situation, right. But that is a sure way to get killed. So those of you at home, if you're in a situation like her and you're hearing this and saying, my God, I see where this led, I'm not going to let that happen, You're not going to do it to me. I'm going to get in the face and say, you're not ever going to hit me again. That is not the thing to do. The thing to do is to find a safe plan to exit that situation. And I have all of that outlined for you on drphil.com. And we partner with the National Network to End Domestic Violence and the National Hotline for domestic violence and abuse. And it's all part of our End the Silence on domestic violence. And Robin is a great ambassador to the women's shelters around the country on this. We work on these things, but the one thing you don't want to do is get up in somebody's face, because that's a good way to get yourself killed or seriously hurt. So that is not what to do. So hear that. There's a safe way to make an exit plan. So, you know, that's not what you want to do. But she is out of it now, but it leaves deep, debilitating, and serious scars. And you question whether she seriously wants to get past this. I truly believe that she does. And I want to talk about what has to happen and what role you can play in getting that done, and we need to get started doing that. Now, Charlotte says she's worried about her own violent behavior towards her husband and her children. We're going to talk about all of that next and an action plan for getting this under control. We'll be right back.
I still live with emotional pain from all the abuse. I have tried to let this go. I've had therapy. I've confided in friends and family, and all it takes is just driving by a certain area or hearing a certain song or seeing an old acquaintance, and it brings everything back.
Okay, I'm here with Charlotte and her husband, Race. Now, Charlotte has shared with us, I think, very painfully, but I also think very helpfully, a very, very difficult time that she has spent with a man that she says was very abusive, very threatening, a man that is now charged with first-degree murder of a woman. Charlotte's experiencing very understandable guilt because she failed to prosecute this man to the full extent that might have been available to her at the time. Had she done so, would he have still been in jail and not been able to perpetrate misery on other people? Maybe, maybe not. You know, Charlotte, you can't play the what-if game. You said that you've been through therapy. You've talked to people about this, but yet it continues to haunt you. Race says, you know, you just don't seem to turn this loose. What I can... Tell you is this. I've not done a full diagnostic workup on you, but I can tell you that if I was doing that, I would very much expect that I would see signs of post-traumatic stress disorder in you. I would expect that I would see changes in certain parts of your brain, particularly in the neocortex of your brain. because when you go through prolonged trauma, and particularly if there's a likelihood of traumatic brain injury, and you've been hit in the head a lot during this, that you get actual changes in your brain patterns that make it virtually impossible. It's like being on a racetrack with no exit. And so you get going around that racetrack, you're looking for an exit ramp to get out of it, and there's just no off-ramp. It's as fresh as it happened yesterday. And we on the outside look at it and don't get it. And you say, why don't y'all get it? Well, I get it. Because this is neurological, which means it's involuntary. So what I'm telling you is that there's very specialized help for people that have survived the type of things that you have survived. It's not just a general therapist. There's very specialized help for this. And I want to get you that very specialized help. And that's just our gift to your family. Will you take that help and embrace it with both hands?
Gladly.
Isn't it time that you put this behind you?
Yes.
All right. It truly is. Deal? Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Next, if you're dealing with abuse in your relationship, I have the steps that you need to take right now to help you get out of a potentially dangerous situation. I'll tell you what they are when we come back. If you're the victim of abuse and you need professional help now, I want you to call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. Help is available to callers 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Or you can go to nnedv.org for help and local resources in your community. Now, those links will also be on drphil.com. And, you know, we have a campaign here that we've been working on, End the Silence on Domestic Violence. And if you want to be one of the silence breakers, you can go to drphil.com and sign up. 1 in 4 women report having been a victim of domestic violence, and we know it's one of the most underreported crimes in America. So I know a lot of y'all listening right now are in that situation. There is help. Number one priority is to maintain safety, and on drphil.com I have all the steps to creating a safe plan for your escape. And there is a plan, and there'll be some things you haven't thought about. So take a look there, and it will give you some ideas. I appreciate everybody being here today. We'll see you next time. So long.